Everything that we do in our own property eventually leads to the ocean. We have 3 principles for landscape renovation, and they are conservation, permeability, and retention. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these things. CPR for your yard. And we're going to talk about this through the 6 tenets of sustainability. And the 6 tenets for us, of course, are conservation, permeability, remediation, which is mostly about soil, developing native habitat, reducing waste, and sparking community action. Here's the thing. If each of us takes an action in our own front yard, it's not just for us. It's for the whole community. You can't just talk about conservation. You have to also talk about holding stormwater on your property. You have to talk about planting native plants or near native plants. The plants that are native to Southern California, the plants that are actually native to the El Segundo area, there's a huge list. And those are beautiful and vibrant all year round. Go out and take a look at our garden. And here's another thing. Conservation of water is actually conservation of energy, because here in California, that whole delivery system takes about 20% of the electricity in all of California. And by the way, when you're saving energy, you're also improving air quality. What on average we have found is that the inside stuff is only 40% of our total residential water use. 60% of our water use, on average, is outside. Now, here's the thing that really concerns us. Most of that water, 70% of the water that we use outside, doesn't stay on our property. It actually runs off and goes to the ocean, carrying those pollutants. This is why we care about what happens in the yard. Okay, so how much do we actually need? Well, the amount of water you need depends on the type of soil that you have and the kinds of plants that you have. We call this evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is a measure of how quickly water evaporates from the soil and, everybody listen to this, how quickly water evaporates from the plants. So it's like plant sweat. As the temperature goes up, this is a measure of how much the plants are sweating, how much water they need to replenish themselves. Here in this area, we need 47 inches of water a year, 4 feet of water a year on a square foot of turf grass in order to keep it healthy. 47 inches. And if we had planted natives like what we have out there, we would only need 9 inches of water. It's a big difference between the two, and there's place in between. But you can see that the turf grass is definitely the place that's consuming the water. So we like to say it's a frowny face. What I want to emphasize to you is that making the choices that we're talking about for ocean-friendly garden isn't about sacrificing. It's actually about enhancing your quality of life. You can see here we have a garden, turf-centric, 34,000 gallons of water a year. And here it's been converted to an ocean-friendly garden, 10,000 gallons of water a year. They've saved 2/3 the water, and it's, I think, a heck of a lot nicer to come home to. Living soil is the foundation for healthy gardens. And what differentiates a living soil is whether or not you have a brick or a sponge. Living soil is a sponge. It will hold on to water when there isn't any, and it will release it when there's too much. 1 teaspoon of living soil is filled with billions of bacteria and protozoa, nematodes, mycorrhizal fungi. It's filled with life, and that's what we want to try to do. So the next piece of ocean-friendly gardening that we want to talk about is, what about stormwater? The most important stormwater for us is what we call the first flush. First flush is the first 3/4 of an inch to an inch of water that happens after a dry spell. It's called first flush because this is the water that picks up all the pollutants that have been gathering during the dry time. And if you don't hold on to it, if you're not able to hold that on your property and treat it right there in your living soil, that stuff goes right out to the beach. This is why beaches are closed for 4 or 5 days after a storm. There's another thing called dry weather runoff. Dry weather runoff is what happens, and you know it, you see it when you go out for your walks, right? That's what's happening when the sprinklers are overspraying and when people are hosing down driveways and doing all that stuff. 100 million gallons a day of drinking water runs off our streets on a dry day in LA. Another issue for conservation, but also for this dry weather runoff reduction, is something we call smart Smart irrigation controllers, listen up. Smart irrigation controllers are weather-based controllers. That's what makes them smart. They are adjusting based on what the actual weather is, not just whether it's raining, but whether the temperature is going up and down. They're adjusting for evapotranspiration. That's why they're smart. And by the beginning of next year in California, you won't be able to buy an old timer, a dumb timer. You'll only be able to buy smart timers. Thank you very much for your time. Please come to one of our bigger presentations. It's so much fun. It's interactive. It's not as, one person talking.